Now, you know that I hate the nanny state. I know most of you do too.
It's the ultimate nanny state. The same nanny state that says you can't drink 32 ounces of a soda drink is not good for you. Well, who are you to tell me that? I don't need you to tell me that.
In today's video, we're going to take a hard look at the data behind worker benefits, from unemployment benefits to maternity, paternity leave to vacation time. Do these social safety nets and worker benefits result in a less productive workforce? And at what cost does that come to small businesses? Or is the idea of a German nanny state just a myth? Over the last couple of weeks, we've been in the midst of comparing salaries, taxes, social contributions, and cost of living factors such as housing, utilities, transportation, and food between the United States and Germany. And while the outcome of that analysis basically said that if you were a single worker in the United States, you had more disposable income. But if you were a family in Germany, you would probably have more disposable income there. And despite that being pretty fair, I made a lot of Americans angry. But the thing is, these comments aren't really nuanced. There's always been criticism from more fiscal conservative Americans who truly view any form of social safety net as inherently bad and probably socialist, even though it's not. Whether that's claiming that welfare recipients are lazy, or that fathers who take paternity leave aren't good providers for their family, or that countries where it's legally obligated to take longer vacations results in a less productive workforce. There's just this notion that better worker protections result in a nanny state, where workers are lazy and they just want the government to do everything for them. So let's examine that claim. Rather than spew misinformation and yell into a void, what do science and data actually tell us about worker protections, and whether or not this actually does create a sort of nanny state, like the counter-argument often says it does? From unemployment benefits to maternity, paternity leave, or even vacation time, do these social safety nets and worker benefits result in a less productive workforce? And ultimately, at what cost do we pay for these benefits, especially small business owners? So without further ado, let's get started. You know, over the years, I've published articles and even a dissertation that discusses the role of housing in the formation of the American dream. But the single-family home with the sprawling yard, the white picket fence, that's really the end goal. The American dream, in and of itself, is really a story of a journey. And the idea that anyone can start from nothing and work their way up to success and financial stability. I mean, we quite literally refer to America as the land of opportunity. But I can't stress this enough. The American public has really always cared more about equal opportunity than about equal results. In talking about this issue, we often invoke the phrase equal opportunity, but we seldom reflect on what we really mean by opportunity, or how much of it we really have, and what we should do if that opportunity is in short supply. But despite saying that we care more about equal opportunity, the reality is that opportunity has actually become more and more unequal in recent years. And let me explain what I mean. While many like to think of the United States as a country where anyone willing to work hard can succeed, the reality for many is much more complicated than that. Income segregation by neighborhood and zip code has become one of the defining features of the American urban and suburban city, and it comes with a pretty steep price. Harvard University's Equality of Opportunity Project set out to measure these effects of place on children's earnings as adults, so-called neighborhood effects. Their research found that moving within one's metro area from a below average to an above average neighborhood in terms of upward mobility would increase the lifetime earnings of a child growing up in a low-income family by $200,000. And ultimately, for the 111 million US adults in the bottom half of the income distribution, growth has been practically non-existent now for over a generation. While at the top of the ladder, it has been extraordinarily strong. In other words, the rich are getting richer, but the poor are staying the same. And perhaps we really shouldn't be so surprised by that. Because while 90% of the children born in 1940 grew up to earn more than their parents, today only half of all children earn more than their parents did in the United States. And all of this comes at a time when being a worker in the United States is more precarious than ever. The US federal government has fewer legal work protections compared to all other industrialized nations. And as a result, Americans work longer hours than people in all of Europe and Japan and suffer from higher rates of burnout. So what are countries like Germany doing, and does it actually make a difference? Unlike European countries, employment in the US is at will, meaning companies can let go of their workers at any time, so long as it's not discriminatory. And because of this at-will relationship between employees and employers, the US actually doesn't mandate compensatory pay at the federal level. According to the US Department of Labor's website, there's no requirement in the Fair Labor Standards Act for severance pay, as, quote, severance pay is a matter of agreement between an employer and an employee, or the employee's representative. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, but they're limited. For example, effective July 2020, New Jersey requires employers with more than 100 employees to give severance packages in many cases when doing mass layoffs like plant closings or filing for bankruptcy. But generally speaking, whether you're an hourly employee or a salaried employee, whether you work at a big company or a small firm, once your boss decides to fire you and escorts you out the door, they don't have to pay you anything after that. And speaking of escorting you out the door, that's quite literally what happens in many situations in the United States. In the US, your employee can fire you without notice, literally telling you to pack your things and get out. But on the flip side of things, it's very, very difficult. Not impossible, but difficult to get fired in Germany. In principle, if you've been working at a company with more than 10 employees for more than 6 months or a probationary period, you can't just simply be dismissed. To fire you, your employer needs to have one of the following reasons, such as operational reasons, like if your company receives fewer orders and can't really pay all of their employees, or if they just don't have the need for your position any longer. Other reasons include a worker's conduct. So you could be dismissed for cheating or stealing from your employer, insulting or harassing your colleagues, or missing work without a valid justification. But also, there are a few personal reasons, like you could lose your job if you're no longer able to do that job due to your individual condition or situation, or like if you lose your work permit. But if they do decide to fire you in Germany, there is an entire procedure that they have to follow. For starters, it must be communicated in writing, as in a physical letter. And if you can't find it specified in your contract, there's actually a national statutory period of cancellation that they've actually created that could apply to you. This deadline depends on the duration of your employment, and essentially the longer that you've been at a company, the longer of a notice period that your job is ending that they have to give you. So in practice, this means that the longer you've been with the company, the longer of a time period you have with pay to actually find a new job. However, I should mention that technically speaking, just like in the United States, here in Germany, there is no federal requirement for severance pay. But there's kind of a loophole. It's very common in Germany that if you get fired, you sue your employer. And in practice, more than 85% of the lawsuits against dismissals are settled with severance payments. The amount of such severance is usually calculated at half of the gross monthly salary per year of employment. But as a rule of thumb, it can be lower or higher. It really just depends on the employee's chances of success in that possible lawsuit. So at the end of the day, what kind of difference do these worker protections actually make for workers in the US versus Germany? Well, for starters, Germany has significantly lower rates of personal bankruptcy, because not only do you have time to find a new job while still getting paid from your old job, But even in times of significant layoffs or financially distressed employers, you can actually still receive income. And the pandemic kind of showcased this. As lockdowns to contain the coronavirus pandemic ripped through the global economy, nations like the US mainly had to rely on beefed up unemployment benefits to cushion the fall. But here in Germany, we have something called Kurzarbeit, which translates to short-time work. And financially distressed employers could drastically reduce worker hours, with the government actually paying the majority of their lost wages. As a result of these very divergent policies, the US official unemployment rate spiked from 3.5% to 14.7%, while Germany's only rose from 4.7 to 5.5 over the exact same period. And this policy can be especially useful for firms at risk of losing highly skilled workers that they've invested in. And that word, investment, seems like a really good one to use in this situation because when I worked in the United States, I always kind of felt like I was a cog in a machine. That at the end of the day, I was just an employee to them and that they could fire me if they needed to or wanted to. It was just business. But here in Germany, I really do feel like my employer invests in me, and I feel a stronger want and need to invest in them in return. All right, guys, I'm gonna hit you off with a pretty strong statistic to start off this next section. According to a recent poll, despite being on vacation, 2/3 of Americans still check work emails, which is unheard of here in Germany. And I think what hurts the most about that statistic is that it's not really just the fact that Americans are still working even when they're not supposed to be working. It's that on top of all of that, Americans receive far less vacation days by comparison. So the fact that those very few vacation days get further compromised by not truly taking a break from work really underscores just how overworked Americans are. They get some of the lowest federally mandated vacation days in the world. And listen, even if you want to argue with me in the comment section that, yes, Ashton, 10 is the minimum, but in practice you usually get a few more. Listen, it's great that you think that, but in reality, you're still coming up dramatically short. On average, employees in the United States take just 14 days off per year, while workers in Germany take an average of 28. And it's important to note again that the prevailing system in the US is a PTO bank, or a collection of days for paid time off, meaning that those 14 days are sick days and your vacation days lumped together. But in Germany, vacation days and sick days are completely separate. In fact, if you get sick on vacation, you get those vacation days back. Because here in Germany, not only do you get the federally mandated 20 vacation days, it's also federal law in Germany that public holidays are also paid, which is not the case in the United States. Additionally, you need to take or be allowed to take at least one vacation of a minimum of 2 weeks per year to allow for proper rest and recovery from work. So ultimately, the big takeaway from this section that I want to talk about is what does this kind of sick time and vacation time ultimately mean for worker outcomes in the US versus Germany? Well, for starters, more than 1,400 German companies, such as the ones on your screen, are leaders in their market niches. Why? Because historically speaking, strong German trade unions and work councils work together with employers to create circular business models in which profitable growth goes hand in hand with people incentives. Neither business performance or work-life balance is sacrificed for the good of the other. And as a result, Germans tend to produce more while working fewer hours than their international counterparts. As I mentioned before, annual leave of at least 20 to 25 days, excluding public holidays, is a given in your average German company. And employees return the favor with focused work, driving quality, innovation, and financial performance. So yeah, it kind of puts that infamous German efficiency in a whole new light. They're productive and well-rested. You know, I'm not going to mince words here at the start of this section because a complete lack of parental leave in the United States is one of the biggest things that has always bothered me about American work policies. And, I'll be frank, I'm a mom, and it's absurd to me that we don't have basic worker protections that protect us as just being a human being. Or that in the United States, you would have to negotiate in your work contract to be treated with basic human rights. Because as humans, we produce other humans. That's just sort of what happens. And the US might be one of the world's wealthiest nations, but on one key metric, we come in dead last. We're the only rich country offering no national paid parental leave program. Now, granted, workers are guaranteed unpaid leave, up to 12 weeks without losing their jobs through the Family and Medical Leave Act passed in 1993. But many people can't afford to take unpaid leave. And about 44% of US workers don't even qualify for the benefits through the FMLA because the FMLA excludes smaller employers as well as many part-time workers. Now currently, 9 states and the District of Columbia do have established paid family leave programs, typically though only between 8 and 12 weeks. And some employers offer paid parental leave as a way to entice workers to come to their business. But what that means is that in the US, only 21% of workers have access to paid family leave through their employers, even though, according to the Pew Research Center in 2015, both parents work full-time in almost half of all two-parent families. And guys, ultimately, I think there's a real danger in saying that, well, I'm okay with just putting paid family leave as a benefit to entice people to come work at a particular job. Because what you're essentially saying is that rather than everyone being treated with basic human rights, oh, well, I'll go work for that employer because at least they're not complete monsters. Like, that's absurd. Being treated as a human isn't a bargaining chip. But as you can imagine, things are different in Germany. New moms here are entitled to Mutterschutz, which is a legally protected 14 weeks off as maternity leave, at least 6 weeks before and 8 weeks after childbirth. From there, employees, both male and female, who have a German employment contract are entitled to parental leave. Whether you're full-time, part-time, marginal employment, fixed term, or open-ended contract, or even a trainee. The entitlement to so-called parental leave exists until the child reaches 3 years old. And even though parental leave is an unpaid break, new parents can apply for what's called parental allowance or Elterngeld. This state-funded program pays up to 1,800 euros a month to compensate for this lack of salary. But the best part is that during this entire time where you take this break from work to, be with your little one, your job is protected. In most cases, you can even return to the same position you had before your leave. So what do these parental leave policies ultimately mean for German workers? Well, unsurprisingly to me at least, when you treat an employee like a human with equitable access to basic human rights, your employees are actually strikingly more loyal to their employers. Consider this. The average length an employee in Germany stays at one company is 11 years. In contrast, in the United States, the average tenure at a job was just 4.3 years for men and 3.8 years for women. But I don't want to paint it all rosy because Germany isn't immune to something called the motherhood gap. Essentially what this means is that in countries like the US and Germany, the pay gap between women and men has remained almost constant since the beginning of the 2000s. So despite women being just as likely to receive a university degree as men and make up half the talent pool, women still earn less compared to men in terms of average gross hourly wages. And numerous research suggests that the large part of the gender pay gap can be attributed to women's wage and career penalties, which typically start to evolve with family formation. However, in general, countries where reconciliation of paid work and family is institutionally supported and socially accepted, mothers spend more time in the labor market and usually achieve better labor market outcomes in terms of pay or promotion opportunities. And these countries, such as Germany, usually have widely accessible and high-quality public childcare, as well as paid parental leaves, which are flexible and long enough to ensure mothers' continuity of employment without leading to substantial losses in their human capital. And so ultimately, as you can see from this graphic, the gender pay gap is smaller in Germany. Now, I do want to address a common counter-argument to providing such worker benefits and social safety nets. And that's that by providing these benefits, it disproportionately hurts small businesses. Because while Amazon might be raking in billions in profits, small business owners do usually have tighter margins. And while we federally mandate such worker protections, the argument exists that it could be more difficult for a small business owner in Germany than the United States. And to be honest, for me, this is a really weak argument, because what you're essentially saying is that because it's, tighter margins with a small business, that they should be able to compromise worker benefits, essentially not giving their employees basic human rights, which again, the worker benefits we've discussed today are considered a basic human right in every other developed nation. But that in the US, we should be able to give small businesses some lax here because it might cut into their profit margin, like you're employing robots or human slaves. And the thing is, I also tried to do some digging on this, but in the studies that have been done and performed within the United States, they show that not only do small business owners offer less benefits than major corporations, it also costs them less to do so. For example, as a percentage of payroll costs, surveyed small employers spent just 26% on employee benefits, while larger employers spent 33% on average. So again, small business owners, in terms of a percentage of what they pay for workers, they're already paying less for less. And this next statistic, if you've been watching our video series on salaries, taxes, and social contributions between the US and Germany, this next statistic really should shock you. So I want you to keep in mind again that 26% to 33% spent on employee benefits in the US. Keep that in mind because, as I've explained here in Germany, employers here must withhold income tax, solidarity tax, levies on social insurance schemes to cover pension, unemployment, health, and long-term care insurance. Well, these contributions are split. They're equally divided between the employer and the employee, except for the accident insurance, which is paid solely by the employer. But in total, the employer contributes just 19.325% on top of an employee's salary into these worker benefits, meaning that as a percentage of what they pay their employees, Germany spends less to provide better benefits. Yeah, you heard me right. So despite the US national self-image as a nation of small businesses and entrepreneurs, the US small business sector is proportionately not as large of an employer as small business sectors in the rest of the world's rich economies. Now, one interpretation of this data is that self-employment and small business employment may be less of an indicator for entrepreneurship than we have long thought. But another way to interpret this data is that the US has something to learn from the experience of other advanced economies, which appear to have much better luck promoting and sustaining small business employment. One plausible explanation for the consistently higher shares of self-employment and small business employment in the rest of the world's rich economies is that all of these economies have some form of universal access to healthcare. 2 separate studies have found that the high cost to self-employed workers and small businesses of the private employer-based healthcare system in place in the United States may actually act as a significant deterrent to small business startup companies, an experience that's not shared by entrepreneurs in countries with universal access to healthcare. So, while this is very much not a healthcare video, it's really interesting to me that these discussions kind of continue to come back to the same conclusion. And that's that American private healthcare, not only does the US system cost employees in the US more than every other developed nation, it also costs US employers more to subsidize it than employers in every other developed nation for worse health outcomes. So I think it's important that we kind of circle back to the question in the title of this video. Is Germany a nanny state? Quite frankly, no. Whether we're talking about efficiency of hours worked versus the productivity that they actually create, or just the financial efficiency of being able to provide robust benefits for less cost to small business owners, Germany outperforms the United States in all of these categories. Again, outperforms them while still providing better worker benefits. All right, guys, so I think that's a great place to wrap up today's video. And if you can, I'd love to hear from you down in the comment section to share a personal story of how worker benefits or worker protections in your home country have benefited you or even hurt you in practice. Because, while in today's video we went over a lot of studies, a lot of data, I love hearing more of the personal side of these things, how they've personally affected your life. And I think that could be a really interesting discussion to have in the comment section because, like I've said before, we have a pretty international group of viewers with these videos. And yeah, I think this could be a really fun discussion and a nice learning opportunity for all of us to sort of compare and contrast what our experiences have been like. But as always, if you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from the Black Forest family, hit that subscribe button. So I'll see you next Sunday. Tschüss!